Welcome to Medical Confessions.
Your remedy for serious medicine. I'm Jen.
I'm April.
And I'm Scott. Today we're going to be talking about those random medical treatments that we used to do to people in the past. So they're just strange medical treatments that you didn't think would actually be a thing, but it was.
So these are my favorite episodes because it gives us the freedom to each kind of do our own research and to find out. And it's never surprising. Like I always think, we're going to all come to the table with like some new, unique, but no, like we always migrate to the stuff that we thought interesting. And April's always got like farts and digestion and, that kind of stuff. And Scott's is always like, clinically backed. Like he
I want some studies.
And mine's always like voodoo nonsense. So, but we're all here with our choice references. Scott's very formal with his computer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mine's little handwritten notes.
I'm going to read straight from the page.
I like it.
All right.
So, shall we get started?
Go first.
Go ahead, Jen.
Okay, so mine is actually one. This is from the ancient Egyptians, and it's not so much that I think it's crazy because April, which one? Because we researched some of the same ones. I just thought it was really, it's kind of funny. So the ancient Egyptians actually used to use specifically crocodile dung as contraceptives.
Why crocodile dung?
I don't know if it was just readily available to them or what, and I'm assuming that they used other types of feces, but the reason they used crocodile dung, their thought process was if you packed, excuse my lingo here, the vagina with, I promise, this is legit, dry crocodile dung, the idea was that the body temperature would help moisten and it would actually create a barrier and prevent semen from passing and from a person becoming pregnant. So
I'm seeing two problems with this right away. Two different dangers.
Two?
The first danger, how do you get what's the collection method there?
Well,
right?
I'm assuming it's your backyard. Like you probably just walk out by the riverbed and you're probably like, oh, yeah. Landmine. Sweet.
So it's not that you're following around the crocodile with a little doggy bag of poo.
The Egyptians were like silver lining. They were like, oh, crocodiles, but
they just let their slaves go and collect the poo.
I don't know. I didn't gather that.
The second risk is how do you go up to a lady and say, stand by, I just need to put this in someplace pretty,
Yeah, I feel like it was probably initiated by the women.
Yeah.
Like the women probably didn't want to get pregnant, and this was probably like, how do we prevent this?
Mm-hmm.
Shove some poo.
Hey,
Well, yeah, and I read also
because
that
I can't get pregnant in. Never mind.
I don't know. I just think that
place.
you think about prevention techniques. It actually just like probably menstrual health and all that kind of stuff. Like women have had to do some pretty gruesome things, I think, for self-care. And I would assume that they were just like, what can we do to prevent this? Crocodile dung is what they used. And I don't know that they didn't use other sort of animal fecal matter, but that was their go-to. I think myself, I probably would have just collected like clay from the riverbed, probably, but for whatever reason. And I don't know that it's that crazy now, knowing several friends and stuff that have gone through like in vitro and fertility issues. And you think about, I'm like, there's probably a lot of stuff that might be bad for semen. Like, so maybe it was those qualities that they were seeking out. Like, what is really...
Like the old school spermicides.
Yeah, like maybe that was it. Maybe they're...
Yeah, and I read a little further into one of the articles I read about the crocodile dung, and they like even use some like half lemons.
That's where I was going to go. So they actually, I know. So they call them pessaries is what it's called. I don't know what it means, but like an additional thing that they added to. So tree sap, half a lemons, cotton. Those are things that they would add to the crocodile dung to help with the barrier. So
tree sap, isn't that?
I know. Like I am thinking maybe that's how the first Brazilian wax took place. I don't know, but like it just sounds dangerous.
That's hard to get out as tree. Like when that gets on, when that gets on your skin. That's tough to get off.
I don't know, but I just thought that was really interesting. The same thing, like they added in, like these women were like, they were serious for science.
Yeah, sure, go ahead and put that.
So, and for me, it was just like one of those things, like, wow, we have it easy.
Now, I don't have the appropriate anatomy, but when I cut myself and put lemon on it, that hurts. I got to imagine now.
That's what I was thinking.
Have you guys ever had lemon?
No, and I would say that it probably has
placed
more
on you?
to do. Like, I think you would have to have an abrasion, but I'm getting uncomfortable with this. So I'll carry on.
Let's move on.
Getting too
I don't
far
want to think about lemon on my hoo-ha.
April, what do you got?
Lobotomies. I'd heard about lobotomies before. I didn't know what the actual procedure was until last night.
Because you were really good with your homework.
Yeah.
Last minute, April.
Oh, don't act like you weren't either.
I woke up early this morning to look up some stuff.
Thank you. So in the 1940s, lobotomies were a popular fad, pretty much for any mental issue, from schizophrenia to mild depression or anxiety.
If that was the case now, like, everybody would have a lobotomy.
People were sending their kids, like their moody teenagers, to get lobotomies. It was a procedure that involved the frontal lobes through the eye sockets with a modified, like, ice pick. It's like
What?
a 10-inch metal prongs through the eye sockets. I don't know if you can see that, but
We'll have to do a link
and
or
a
something. That's
hammer.
pretty gruesome. No.
And a hammer. They would they would then move the instrument side to side to separate this frontal to separate the frontal lobes from the thymus, the part of the brain that receives and relays sensory input. About 50,000 lobotomies were done, and in the United States in 1949, the inventor of the lobotomy was given the Nobel Peace Prize.
Because all these people are angry. We've really calmed down some
We have
people.
calmed down every negative teenager in the
We've just turned them into vegetables.
They used them a lot in insane asylums.
Yeah, and I've heard that
Yeah.
before, but I didn't realize that it was so mainstream. Like, I knew even the same as like sterilization and stuff like that. When people with disabilities, there was a time period where they would sterilize people with certain disabilities to prevent that from being passed on. So that doesn't shock me, but that it was so mainstream.
Well, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yes,
I mean, that's what that was about. But you just, I mean, that's the term, lobotomize somebody, but you turn them into a vegetable a lot of times. And I guess that would, create peace of sorts.
Ugh.
Yeah, I guess it created a safe working environment
So
for
just
the
get rid of
nurses
the
and
problem?
doctors. Yeah, I guess. No one has done a true lobotomy since in this country since Freeman performed his last transorbital operation in 1967, where the patient ended up dying.
Well, see, and I think what I'm more shocked at is the process of doing it. Like, for some reason, I thought of it as more modern medicine, and I thought of reaching the skull and,
Like with a scalpel or a laser or something.
Yeah,
and-
like, and of course, that wasn't there wasn't the means, but that's like chopsticks in the eyeballs. That's pretty messed up.
Yeah.
Well, it does solve the problem of the anger, I guess.
Yeah.
It's similar to the how they used to cure hysteria in women.
Oh,
Yes.
we've talked about that.
Have we talked about this, so we don't need to go into it again?
Let's not.
All right.
So, you said some people become vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
Is it just by chance? Like, they...
They just said a small percentage of people supposedly got better or stayed the same, but for many people, they had a negative effect on
Death.
Infections,
infections,
the ability not to function on their own. So
Yeah, you're taking away your thought process, your frontal lobe, where all of your higher cognitive reasoning is.
oh,
No big deal.
I was thinking about, like, I've watched, on medical shows where they do surgeries, and they do some of them where conscious sedation, I guess, or they're trying to find out which parts of the speech patterns, and so they'll have the patient talk to the docs while they're, what do you call it? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, well, they stimulate the area of the brain, and funny
that's the
things
word I was
happen,
looking
like
for.
hands go flying up.
Right. And so I'm thinking
Start
about
drooling.
how they've talked about how no anatomy is perfect. So you can't go in and just assume I can adjust this part of this person. And so they will purposely stimulate those areas to find out how the patient reacts before they do anything permanently. So it just cracks me up that they're just like, oh yeah, you just lop it off 1/4 inch back and we're good. Some people die.
Well, and you're saying they do it to a bunch of kids, which is ironic because, you've got gray and white matter in your brain, and white matter matters, and, those are the myelin sheaths, and your frontal lobe doesn't even get myelinated till your late 20s, which is why teenagers think they're invincible. And so if they're
my
taken
parents
out-
would have sent me to get one.
Stick a chopstick in her eye. Let's
She's
cure this.
moody.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's interesting.
I prefer the other way to cure moodiness.
Which is what?
The cure for hysteria in women back
yeah,
in the day.
back in that. All right,
Yeah.
next.
You guys hate talking about that. It's how vibrators were created. Because doctors hated the carpal tunnel. Anyways.
Just couldn't resist.
No, we couldn't.
Now they're curious, right? We can't talk about it without bringing it up. Anyways,
Well,
Ryan,
we can watch other episodes that will explain it.
But I did reread that study just because I thought it was funny.
the hysteria one?
Yeah.
Come
Jen's
so
like,
far.
let's just stop talking about this. I'm uncomfortable.
Oh.
You brought up the crocodile dung.
I
What do
know.
you have, Scott?
Yeah, what have you got?
Well, you've all heard the term blowing smoke up your butt.
Mm-hmm.
And that came from the very treatment of blowing smoke up your butt to revive people in cardiac arrest. Specifically, drownings was a thing.
What was the bear? I mean, what was why? Why was that
I
expected
don't
to
know.
do good? Like, I mean, they
Why
had the
would
old.
you shove a chopstick in your eyeball to cure moodiness? I mean, why do they do
Well, I
things?
mean, like, I'm talking about, like, anatomy-wise and stuff. Like, what do they think was going to take place?
So-
like,
Well, so it all started in the early 1800s. There was some docs in Europe who saw the Native American idea of blowing smoke into people, and it cured random things.
into their faces.
So that's one of them.
Faces.
So the first known doc was in 1745. Richard Mead suggested administering tobacco smoke up the anus
God.
in the hopes that in cardiac arrest that would stimulate the heart, because at the time they felt like tobacco would stimulate the heart. You're in cardiac arrest, specifically from drownings. Let's do this.
So,
What
was the connection to the rectum or the anus? Like,
that
what?
is a good question.
Yeah.
Well, and it is known. I mean, we give medicines via the rectum all the time because it's super vascular area.
Is
Gets
it
into
more
the
vascular
bloodstream.
than oral?
Your large intestine is hugely vascular.
Okay.
More than I would say your mouth. But I guess I can't say that specifically,
For
but
sure.
it seems like it is.
Yeah, that's your assumption. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it caught on, right? And in 1774, doctors William Hawes and Thomas Cogan, they practiced medicine in London, and they formed the Institution for Affording Immediate Relief to Persons Apparently Dead from Drowning. That is the longest name of an organization I've ever heard. You've probably heard of the Royal Humane Society, and that is what that society turned into. So they started off. Oh yes. So they started off as the
They
institute.
probably don't advertise that this was their roots.
Well, can you imagine you're sitting around, what are we going to call ourselves? I know, the Institute for Affording Immediately Relief to Persons Apparently Dead from Drowning. That's a mouthful.
It is.
How about we just call ourselves the Royal Humane Society?
It's like the newer Ghostbusters movie with the version with.
Oh, I didn't see that one.
Yeah, so they start off with like a really formal, like scientific name for their group, and then they just became the Ghostbusters. But same kind of thing. Like,
I'm too loyal to the original. I didn't want to see that one.
oh, you have to give it a shot.
Yeah.
It's-
I was skeptical, but I.
It's a
liked
different. And Bill Murray makes a.
Oh, does he make a cameo?
And it's quite great, actually.
Maybe
Yeah.
I will have to watch it
Yeah.
then.
Anyway.
I was trying to remain loyal.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they formed this group, and they actually started offering money to people, 4 guineas, which at the time, if you adjusted for today, is purchasing power of about $756 for anyone
Whoa.
who could successfully revive a drowning victim using this method.
How many
So-
people do you think, like, faked it? They might have even had some false positives by, like, people pretending to drown and then, like, dude, just let me blow. Just do it. I'll split the money with you.
Well, and it's funny because they actually came up with kits, and they made these smoke enema kits that would sit on the side of the River Thames. So if you came across a drowning victim,
Yeah.
you could then, institute your
So smoke
life-saving
enema.
methods.
How do you quickly provide smoke?
Tobacco smoke, I guess you gotta light it
Light.
off.
And
start doing the.
my question, what is the best position to get them in to perform this procedure? Are they on their side? Do you have people holding their legs up?
I don't know. And
Well-
so what about with CPR? Like, I remember reading before that one of the methods to initiate CPR, we'll call it CPR, was to put people over a barrel and roll them back and forth. Was it originally to give them access for the smoke?
Maybe to stick the smoke up their butt. But one of the treatments was you could administer this tobacco smoke orally too, but it was thought anally was better. So you do that. But it became such a thing in the late 1700s. They had these kits on the side of the River Thames, and because, just like the American Heart Association now wants to make it easy for people to defibrillate and do chest compressions, we sing, what's that song, Staying Alive?
Yeah,
or another one, Bites the Dust, depending on if you're pessimist or optimist.
Right.
They came up with their own rhyme that people could tell themselves.
Let's hear it.
If you were going to administer the smoke, so if you said this to yourself, it would make it easier to do. But so the rhyme is tobacco gleister, which means enema. Breathe and bleed, keep warm and rub till you succeed, and spare no pains for what you do, may one day be repaid to you.
Oh,
so
wow.
Let's shove some stuff up
There's
the
a
butt.
thread at the end.
Yeah. Now, ironically, tobacco is actually, kind of bad for the heart in high doses,
Yeah.
So was it helping? Probably not.
I just think about all the obstacles, and probably the time that this was in practice is back when we had the full swimsuits that were how do you even get access to deliver the smoke quickly?
Yeah.
There's so many obstacles and so many failures that we can point out here, aside from the medical side of it. This is inconvenient.
I want to see a recreation of how someone might have done this.
Well, so there
that would
was...
be a great movie, honestly.
Well, in 1746, there was a case of someone who was resuscitated in this method, or thought to. So, as the earliest documented reference to using a tobacco enema to resuscitate somebody, a man who found his wife unconscious, who had nearly drowned, decided he was going to revive her using this method, but he didn't have the kit, so he used tobacco pipe, and he stuck the tobacco pipe up her bum, got the stuff going, embers going, covered it, and blew it into her bum. She then apparently was revived and
What
woke
was
up.
she faking?
Yeah.
Who knows? But because of this, that reviving that woman, it quickly spread, and this became a thing on the side of the roads. But he did notice one complication to this was that should the person wriggle around a bit, a complication could be your mouth coming into contact with the anus. So be careful if you're going to blow smoke up someone's bum using a tobacco pipe, because it's really short and you got to get down in there.
I like how this makes that whole saying so much more clear. You've always heard that, don't blow smoke. Now I get it, and now that's kind of a cute saying.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, what I'm wondering is why this has not become some sort of recreational thing. Why people haven't re-picked up on this and gone, oh,
let's blow smoke up butts.
hookah lounge? Yeah.
Alcohol enemas. It's a thing.
I know, but that's
Butt
why
chugging.
I'm saying, why...
Butt chugging.
I'm surprised that this hasn't become more of a, vaping for down there.
I'm just excited resuscitation science has come to the point where we don't have to go mouth to mouth if you're pre-hospital.
Who knew it was worse
You don't
than that,
have to
right?
stick things up people's butts. You just have to do some compressions.
That's
I
good.
like that science says let's make it easy and let's not shove things up people's butts.
Agreed.
Right. Well, and really honestly, CPR statistics are so dismal. Right?
Yeah,
So
they're getting better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's a good one.
So blowing smoke up your butt. That's what I
I like
got.
it. So the next one, kind of coincidentally, that I have is kind of similar to the blowing smoke up. It's snake oil. So you guys have
I've
heard
heard
the
of the snake
reference,
oil.
the kind of, terms people, they're selling another snake oil. And the thought was that, it's kind of a fake remedy or something that doesn't actually do good. I actually found that snake oil that was brought from a Chinese water snake, it actually has some medicinal and healing properties and is still in use today in some cultures. So back during the Transcontinental Railway, when they had workers from China to be brought over, they brought the snake oil with them. It's found to be really good for RA or any other types of aches and pains in the joints.
What is snake oil?
So what it is when they take a certain type of snake and they boil it and the oils, so they boil it till it starts to just kind of fall apart like you would a roast or whatever, and the oils that float up top and then removed
So all
from
the
it
fats
is
and-
the fats and the, you know, everything from it. So it's not like you have to milk the snake or something. Like it's an oil.
It's not like the crocodile dung collection method.
Exactly. There's more to it. So they would use this, and for the hard labor that these people would have with the railway, they would use this, and they found for like bursitis and aches and pains, especially in the hands and stuff like that, that the snake oil does have healing properties. So supposedly, they call it EPA, omega-3 fatty acid, that this is really high in, and that is what it is. So I think there's probably other items that would do the same thing, but there is a legitimate snake oil, and it...
Well, omega-3s are good for cell
Right.
stuff.
So, but apparently the Chinese water snake is the one. You can't just boil a
Gardener
Okay.
snake.
gardener snake. Although gardener snakes have something crazy on them. Have you ever picked
They
one up?
stink.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like instantly. It's
It's not okay.
disgusting. But I wonder if we boiled one, what would that cure?
There's one way to find out. Let's do this. Let's rub it all over you and see what happens.
So anyway, yeah, I just thought that was kind of cool because again, it kind of gave some reference to, and I knew that snake oil was supposed to be kind of, you know, like a garbage remedy or something, but I didn't know there was actually a snake and Chinese
water snake.
water snake.
All right.
Yeah.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Curing arthritis
I
around
don't
the
know
world.
if it cures it, but it helps alleviate bursitis and arthritis pains. So I liked that one.
Well, you gotta like those old people, and they're, you know, being, you know, old people from the past.
Yeah.
You know, they're being very, you know, inventive because, you know, like we've talked about before with capsaicin. Capsaicin works for rheumatoid arthritis really well.
Right.
But it took somebody rubbing a bunch of, you know, chili peppers on them to figure it out.
Speaking of which, I just had a patient recently that was talking about a bunch of different type of pain that they were, and they're like, in fact, I just got this cream and it's helping a lot. And they gave me the prescription to see, and I was like, oh, really? But
Capsaicin!
capsaicin!
It works like a charm. Don't eat it.
I thought it was
It
exciting.
was prescription.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you have to, at 8%, it has to be prescribed.
Yeah,
Right.
it was legit.
That high.
But anyway.
Works well.
All right, April.
The next one I found was on astrology, and I was super excited because I know, Jen,
I
you're
love
totally
astrology.
into the
Yes,
astrology.
big into this. Okay.
So, back in the medieval times, astrologers were so revered that many thought that they were real-life magicians. They were respected scholars who advised on increasing crop yields, predicting the weather, and informing the family-to-be what sort of personality their children would have to be.
That's legit. Yeah, I should have been in medieval times. I'd have been a genius.
You would have been an astrologist.
Yes.
Or a witch.
Either
No,
way.
it's-
Either way.
That's a flip of the coin then, you know. Salem witch trials was a thing.
The latter would often have consequences on the child's medical care. Doctors would refer to the special calendars that contain star charts in order to aid with diagnosis. By the 1500s, the physicians of Europe were legally required to assess a patient's horoscope before embarking on any medical interference. Astrology suggests...
God is getting so irritated. I am so excited. Keep going.
It had to work. The good old days.
Astrology. Oh my God, I can't say this word.
Okay.
Astrology. That
Suggested that each body part is influenced by the sun, the moon, the planets, and each star sign represents different parts of the body. Aries, for example, pertains to the head, brain, face, eyes, where Scorpio represents reproductive system, sexual organs, bowels, and
Why
Extracorporeal
Scorpio? That's like a
system.
scorpion, right?
After the patient's star chart was examined, the current position of the stars was taken into account. The person's ailment could be predicted, and the diagnosis would be made.
It's exciting.
It's real.
Confirmation bias is a thing. I get
Well,
it.
and you dug really deep into your nephew's
I did.
astrology,
I'm
right?
glad you remember that. Yeah, so my nephew was my
So
first.
happy you brought it up. As a
Yes,
matter of
I
fact.
did. Well, and it was like just a little kit, and I did like, and you have to look up like latitude, longitude, everything on the time of his birth. And when he was an infant, I did this and made his chart, and it's actually kind of pretty. It's almost like artwork when you do somebody's birth chart. And everything that was predicted based upon this chart, I still have it, is to a T what my nephew is today as a 22-year-old man. It's incredible. Like, to a T. So
now, it's
that's
not one
for
of
real.
those things where it's vague enough
No,
that you can put it in, or are there some very specific?
It's an entire book of the guidelines and where to go, and you'd have to flip through, and it's pretty incredible. So, sure, it could be vague, I guess, but it's not. It's for real. So
It's a thing.
But yeah, I like that. That's really cool. And maybe confirmation bias. Like, I've told you guys all before, I think I'm diabetic because when I get hungry, I feel like my blood sugar's low, even though I check my blood sugar and it's not actually low in my head.
You're just angry?
I'm super angry, even though I'm sure I'm no more hungry than the average person, but doesn't matter. Give me food and I'm happy. So even if this is nonsense.
Well, and it's, you start talking, there's a study right now that's, using cardiac dysrhythmia drugs against placebo, and placebo is winning every day of the week on resuscitations.
Take care of here. It takes care of here. There
is a push for doctors to be able to give sugar pills because placebo and just the idea of curing you does make a difference,
right?
Statistically speaking.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Not just in medicine, but in general, give people hope.
So what I've just convinced you of then, that this is probably blowing smoke up your butt, but because of the placebo effect,
I'm just saying, I don't care why you believe it, even if it takes a very scientific, prove it to me guy, and you say, okay, that could actually work for somebody.
Because
you just said that to me,
placebo.
Didn't you?
Yes, the placebo effect.
I'm not agreeing to the placebo effect. But anyways, I appreciate that one, April. That made my day.
I liked it. I've read about my Gemini personality.
Oh, yeah.
And it's pretty...
You're legit. She's a full-on Gemini, as is my sister and my husband.
But I have a Leo moon.
See?
Well,
and those are the differences.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, if my birth chart, like, I am a legit Aquarian. Like, there's I'm, like, 100% Aquarian. And if you read it, it makes sense.
Well, and I will say there is something a little bit interesting, and it could be, again, placebo effect, but, so I'm a Libra.
Mm-hmm.
And
I know, and guess what?
And I'm also an INTJ.
I'm an ENTJ.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But when I was looking that up, a lot of Libras are INTJs.
Yeah. Well, and also, did you know that one of the perfect friendship circles is? This is going to blow your minds. Gemini, Aquarians, and Libras.
Is that where we are?
Swear to God.
Madness. There's placebo effect all over the place.
Now who's right, Scott?
I have no idea to this day what Gemini and a Leo moon means, but I have to give a shout out to my cousin for pointing it out because she was...
She probably has your birthday.
Well, he was like... I was kind of bitching about, like, God, I hate telling people I'm a Gemini. It's just like telling the world that you're crazy. And and so him and his wife started looking into it and asking me all these questions. They're like, oh, just tell him, but you're a Leo moon. I'm like, great.
I think it's like an analytical, like the ability to step back and realize and self-analyze.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. Exciting.
Next.
Well, I don't have necessarily a treatment. In looking up treatment, sometimes you come across these weird studies and you're like, who funded that, honestly? Because that just seems like people just want to have, you're getting drunk at a party at a farm, for instance, where there's a lot of chickens running around. I know what we can do. Let's stick a bunch of sticks on the back of chickens' butts and see if they walk like dinosaurs.
I don't get how that works.
How that works? Well, so this study was done published on February 5th of 2014, and the study was called Walking Like Dinosaurs. Chickens with artificial tails provide clues about non-avian theropod locomotion.
Okay, so it acts as a tail, not as like a third appendage. It's not supposed to lift them or boost them. This just drags behind them like... What
the purpose is, chickens, basically they're trying to say that, avians were, ancestrally speaking, birds came from dinosaurs.
Sure.
And to prove it, they're saying that we can watch the way they walk by changing the center of gravity, because dinosaurs' center of gravity was different than a chicken's. But if we make the chicken's center of gravity the same as a dinosaur's, we can show that they'll walk exactly the same.
So did this start off scientific?
Well, again, I just imagine a bunch of like
Yeah.
grad students and Bruno Grassi, and I'm just going to say et al. Because there's a bunch of them on there. But a bunch of grad students I'm picturing getting together going, what are we going to do for our, thesis?
Right.
And they're just at a farm. I know. Let's stick a plunger on that chicken's butt and see if he walks like a dinosaur. I mean, because that's kind of what
That
they did.
makes sense.
And they succeeded.
Well, and they did, and they were succeeded in proving if you change the chicken's center of gravity, they will walk similar to a dinosaur.
Oh, and see, now I feel like we need to try that.
Well,
I have chickens readily available, and
The
it won't
prob-
injure. Oh, is it dangerous?
it's not dangerous, but it's time consuming because you got to start when the chicken's young. You can't just throw the thing on
it's
there
not
when
just
they're
to try
adult.
it today. And
No, and
I happen to have 10 new
Young.
hatchlings. They're ready to go.
so you've got to be able to attach the tail to the chicken appropriately, and it's got to stay there for their life, so that as they're
Oh,
growing up,
Yeah.
their anatomy will change to walk like a chicken.
Yeah, around
Or walk like a
my
dinosaur.
house, that's a death sentence because there's hawks ready to like pounce on them like that.
Well, yeah, and if they can, well, especially you got this tail flopping
Yeah.
about made of wood. I don't know what you'd make it out of. But,
Yeah.
but they did have a control group. They had the control chicken group. They had a group where they added the same amount of weight to the center of the back of the chicken,
Oh.
and then they had the dinosaur group where they attached the stick to its bum.
Could they
and they
not
watch
just take
around.
like a DNA sample and be like, "Yep, there was a relation there"?
Yeah, I feel like that's a better way to go.
Yeah.
But you're
Yeah.
looking for something to do in college.
Sure.
Hold
Why
my
not?
beer. Watch this. Let's make this study. This is going to work out.
I
for
feel
us.
like they had to have like seen an immediate, like they hooked on a stick and they were like, "Oh yeah, it does change it. Let's do it for a period of time."
So it started off with just putting sticks on chickens' butts and
Yeah, like
let's
by
make this a thing.
accident, like just like animal cruelty, and then they were like, "Ooh, let's make this legit."
Then PETA won't be after us.
Yeah, exactly. But maybe they still will be.
Yeah.
I
So
don't
that's a funny study I came across. Has nothing to do with treatment, but it just
Nice.
I can't imagine how that happened.
Good. So one of my goals in the research for this was it was easy to look and find like historically crazy treatment plans or whatever, and I wanted to find something that was more modern that seems really out there. And I thought, so I found one that I first found a reference to in 2009, and it was that breast milk actually helps fight cancer. So I think that like modern day, like people are more and more supportive of breastfeeding and, the natural healing properties of breast milk. So I don't think that's that crazy. But in 2009, and I don't know at what family dinner this came up, but there was a woman who started providing her dad with her breast milk while he was undergoing chemotherapy.
My dad would kick my butt.
Well, and that's just it. Like I'm trying to
Here, Dad,
think
here's a
like
little milk for your coffee.
Don't
even worry about that.
have you
sweet
tasted
taste.
breast milk?
No. I
No.
didn't even taste my own, but
You have.
I have.
And it has a little bit of a
It's
sweetness
sweet,
to it.
yeah.
Right. Okay. So
It's not horrible.
That's what I've heard.
So anyways, I don't know at what point this was suggested or if it was an accident or what, but the family encouraged this. And so while he was going through treatment, they found that it helped. Now, the article I read about that was more of like a what if. There was no science. There was nothing to prove that it worked. But his results turned out in a way compared to similar people with a similar type of cancer. He came out better. That could be individual, right? That
Well, it could be.
vary.
It's like the people who say the pH diet's good for cancer. Well, no, it's not. Because one, it doesn't work the way you think it does. And two, just because one person did it doesn't mean there's no cause and effect.
Right.
You need cause
Right.
and effect.
So there was an article that was published in May of 2017. So this was super recent. And they found in Sweden, they were actually doing studies trying to find an antimicrobial property to the breast milk. And so some of the studies they were doing, when they injected the breast milk for whatever reason with cancer cells, they found that it was actually killing certain cancer cells. So cervical, bladder, and I think it was stomach. I don't have that one written down, but I think it was stomach. So it's a alpha lactalbumin.
Okay.
That's what they're saying is the property in breast milk that helps fight that. So
Well, I would. This is going to be off the top of my head.
Sure.
So don't quote me on any of it. But so it's an albumin of sorts.
Yes.
I would imagine. Well, albumin binds to calcium. So here's the at different pHs. So specifically higher pHs.
I don't know where you come up with this.
Off the
Yes,
top
carry
of
on.
my
Off the
head.
top of my head.
It's a thing. This is why people get contractures when they're hyperventilating because they're raising their pH and the calcium binds to albumin, so you got no calcium for...
Right.
Anyways, the issue is a lot of things. So like, if you're saying that the flavonoids in cranberries is good for UTIs, in a Petri dish, yes. Breast milk, if this particular molecule, which I don't know, did have this in a Petri dish, fine. But the second you ingest it, you've got to go through your digestive system, passive diffusion has to happen, and then that particular molecule has to arrive at the target cell in its whole form, otherwise it's not going to work. So, or not work the same way. So now in the lab, maybe, but was the study done in people?
So when I say study, the study was not for this. It wasn't conclusive with it. They had a female that was diagnosed at some time during her pregnancy with cervical cancer. And so this female, once she delivered, knew that because of the treatment she was going through that initiated as soon as she delivered the baby, that her breast milk was no longer good for the baby. There was no harm for her ingesting it because she was already getting chemotherapy.
Okay.
So she decided to start drinking it. When she did, the doctors were pretty amazed because some other things happened biologically that weren't happening specifically with her lymph nodes. There was some sort of a calcification that stopped the growth in the lymph nodes, and I know I'm butchering all of this. I don't remember the specifics on it. That the doctors couldn't figure out any other reason for that to happen other than the introduction to the breast milk that she had. So, to answer your question, they're now doing a full study to find out what's happening. But this was only 17, and you know that a good study takes a couple years, so it's still yet to be determined. But I just thought it was really interesting that...
Well, and it will be interesting, right? Because like the cranberry juice for UTIs, you know, it's out there because we can make it do in a Petri dish, so everybody thinks you drink it and it works, and it doesn't.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see if this one does.
Right. And I kind of liked the in limbo one of this one because I wanted to throw something at you that you can probably say isn't going to work, but we can't definitively disprove it yet.
Okay.
Because it's still in the process. So I like that we're on pins and needles.
I have a couple friends that use their breast milk in their baby's eyes for pink eye.
Because of the antimicrobial properties?
I don't know.
I know that Kim Kardashian uses it for her psoriasis.
Well, and I do know albumin, like, you know, so most of the proteins in egg whites is albumin.
So that's what made me laugh, too, because I got to say Bumin, and you and I have done the egg white project together, and I was like, oh, Scott's going to bring that one up. I knew it was coming.
Well, and that doesn't help with infection. But I don't know this particular type of bumin, as it were. So it would be interesting to say, stay tuned, because maybe we should have a breast milk and cancer episode where someone here drinks breast milk, and I've already had it, so I don't feel like I should have to drink breast milk.
I'll do it.
That's me.
April do it. She's never done it before.
Now, how are we going to get the breast milk?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Because are we going to have to cow style
we could
this?
have you take your hormones. You could lactate.
I will do it if
April
it's yours.
has to drink it.
You will drink my breast milk.
I'll do it. Challenge accepted.
Because I believe I got hypothermic recently, so I wouldn't have to lactate.
And when you did this, it reminded me of that.
Yeah, the hypothermia episode.
I'm going to need
Stay
more.
tuned. I think we have something here. I think that there's going to be something breast milkish that's going to have to come.
I just got frozen, so
I don't have any friends that are of childbearing parts of their lives right now, so I'm not going to be able to get right up to the...
And for the record, men can lactate. You just got to take prolactin or have an excessive amount of it. So I don't think we even need to do that episode because we just know it will happen, right? It's a thing.
Yeah, but how cool would it be to organically produce milk for April to test?
I do like the tagline, April has to drink my breast milk. I just don't like what it's going to have to take to make that breast milk.
Interesting. And would it taste the same as a woman's breast milk?
They say it does. The composition of the milk is virtually the same. Little differences here and there.
Oh.
So for all of those hipsters out there who want to bond with their babies, it just doesn't have to be the mom.
I think that's like half of the fun of doing these types of episodes is it leads us off down these rabbit trails of other information, maybe stuff that people aren't searching for, but you know, that ends up being good episodes, good information. So
exciting.
Well, good. Well, if you liked what you saw or heard today, check us out on YouTube or a podcast.
Or visit our website, medicalconfessions.com.